Okay, so let's start and see if more people join. We can do recap after. And so welcome everyone to our September community meeting. And our agenda is going to be pretty similar as usual. We'll start with some introductions, mention the things we shipped and do a few demos, talk about where we're currently working and what's coming next. And we have a few conferences that are happening in the next couple of months. So maybe some of you might attend, and we want to make sure you have the option to connect with us if that's the case. Hey, Matt. And maybe later, depending on how many people we are in the meeting, we might do a discovery session that Matthew is gonna facilitate. And so let's see how that goes. So this is us, and you might have seen that in the last few meetings we keep adding squares here. For the next week, next month we might need to kind of change the size of the boxes if we keep adding people, which is good. Daniel, so Matthew, I need your help to kind of make the slides better.
We'll get it all lined up.
Yeah. So welcome Victoria. She's a new member of the team. She's there with the rest of the crew there in Toronto. And of course, for you not working in the team, the more people you see here, the better for you, because we are gonna keep working and fast. You know, like of course, like if you add more people to a team, things imply that always go faster, right? And anyway, so hopefully they go faster at the moment. So that's this. I don't know if any of you want to introduce yourselves. People are not from Okta. There I see a few new names here. So maybe I don't know, Jean Strack, if you want to introduce yourself and try to explain where you're based, what you do, and why are you here if you are evaluating the product, and how far you are in the evaluation of the product. So I will shut up and wait for you to tell me.
Look, should I start?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let me just turn on my video. Hi guys. So my name's Sean. Together with Struck, we work at a Berlin-based cloud provider, and we're currently fiddling around, I would call it, with OpenFGA, trying to learn what it's all about, doing some relationship-based access control, modeling some of our cloud scenarios that we have that currently are not modeled to the extent that we'd like to model them. So yeah, we're just interested to get to know the community and to understand how we should do things and to see what's up on the roadmap and all those things.
Andres is muted, but I think he's saying, awesome, great to meet you. And then maybe Struck, maybe you can go next.
Yeah, I'm Struck, also living in Berlin, Germany, working for the same cloud-based company as Sean is. So we just joined together here.
Awesome. Happy to have you both.
Hi, I can go. I've been at one or two of these before, but Daniel Lucas. I work for a company called Movie Labs. We are a sort of research lab tech company owned and operated by 5 of the major film studios in Hollywood, and kind of not doing specific project per se, but we do a lot of research around sort of production technology and sort of zero trust kind of authorized security and so on is a big part of that. So this kind of stuff's pretty interesting to me, and I would say fiddling around as well. So
awesome. Thank you, Daniel. I don't know, Andrew and Johnny, we already know you, but maybe you can also introduce yourself so the rest of the people get to know you too. I'm Carlos.
All right, I'm Andrew. I work for a company called Read AI in Seattle. We're a startup, and we rolled out OpenFGA as our OTC solution last spring, and have been using it ever since. And it's it's been really solid. Don't have to think about it that much, except for when we need to update the authorization model or increase the size of the database instance. So yeah, it's been really good. Thanks to the team.
Awesome, Andrew. Thanks very much for sharing that.
Hi, I'm Carlos. I work for New Relic, which is based out of San Francisco. I'm remote, so I haven't actually ever stepped into the office, and why I questioned where it was that my company is based out of. Otherwise, I lurk in these meetings because I'm interested in OpenFGA, and I can't wait to start using it, but just haven't had the opportunity to. So I lurk.
Thanks, Carlos. Hopefully, one of these meetings you are gonna say that you started using it, and but
I will be very happy when that day comes.
Perfect. Thank you, Johnny. I think you're last. If you want to introduce yourself.
Mentioned in the chat, he might be good. Or
I'm sorry, I didn't see. Okay, I didn't see that. Okay, yeah. Hi, Johnny.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So thank you very much for everyone for sharing and introducing yourselves. So if you're just kind of the first meeting you come here, these meetings usually we start by mentioning what we shipped. These are kind of incremental things. So if you don't have a lot of context on the product, you might lose the size of the things we've been looking at and leave perspective on the things we've been working on. And but yeah, anyway, I will go through some details. So we shipped a version of OpenFGA CLI, OpenFGA that has support for caching. In the past, we had support for caching in the cloud product we built in Okta, but not in OpenFGA. We added that in OpenFGA. Right now, it's under experimental flag, but we actually already rolled out that in the cloud product, and we are happy with the results. So we are gonna kind of remove the experimental flag. And what happens with that one is that it will cache the check results in the server for a specific period of time that you can configure, right? And so it should be easy to. The only difference from an implementation perspective is up to now, when you use OpenFGA, you were using like kind of strong, consistent model. So when you write a tuple, you see the results in check immediately, right? Now, if you add a cache, it might happen that you write a tuple and it's not reflected in check for whatever time you configure, right? So, but if you are okay with that level of consistency, then you'll see an impact, a good impact in latency on your implementation. So we also shipped the OpenFGA CLI and new beta. We're gonna call it remove the beta flag probably today or tomorrow, and I will explain you what testing support means. I'm very happy personally with that feature. I like it a lot. And we are gonna we keep working on the Visual Studio Code extension. We're gonna ship a new version pretty soon, and also Daniel is gonna demo what we did. Basically, we are adding validation to Visual Studio Code. Now we are working with the Java SDK. The repo is now public. It's not finished yet, and but you can see what we're doing. And we are gonna also publish a beta version probably today, if we figure out how to do that. We're fighting Maven and credentials and whatever. Hopefully this is done today. And the things we're working today, so we're working on adding support for additional ABAC scenarios. We mentioned this in the last couple of meetings. I will go over that today too. We're working on the Java SDK and the Visual Studio Code plugin. Next things is, we also discussed this in previous meetings, having different ways to authorize calls to OpenFGA, working on USDK for Rust, and also help you build more complex models, but letting you split them in multiple models. That helps you if you're a large organization and need to have multiple teams contributing to the authorization model. And you can look at this in GitHub if you want. There are more details in what's in the backlog that we kind of push for next in the near future. So VS Code extension, Daniel, if you want to share what you've been doing in the last month, that would be awesome. So I'll stop sharing here and let Daniel share.
All right. Can everyone see fine? It's coming through. Yep,
you're
sweet.
good. We've got diagnostics1.fga up on screen.
Excellent. So you can already see the squiggles. I opened up an already broken model. Just to have a look at. So we've implemented two kinds of validation within within the feature. The first being syntax, and then the second being validation of the semantics. In this case, we can see that if we hover over, we've got a model validation error that user doesn't exist. Oh no. We can quickly find that and fix it, and it gets changed in all the locations that were previously broken. Secondary, we've got member is not a valid relation of organization. So looking under organization, we can see I've misspelled member, adding that, fixes, and in the reverse order, breaks. I'm really happy with how quick the validation is here as you type. I'll just go through a few other diagnostic models just to show you some difference. This one is a tricky one. This is actually an impossible model based on these definitions. So you can see that everywhere that you've a mistake has been detected, it's highlighted and listed. You can see them in the problems very clearly as well. And they also are perpetuated behind the scenes. So if you've validated one of these documents before, you're still going to have like how many errors are being shown up here. The other kind of validation we've got, which I haven't shown, is syntax. So there's we've built up the grammar for the language, so we can do things like this. If you mess up a keyword, you're going to get it's going to be called out, and it has for some of the messages very clear instructions about what's broken, easily fixable. Some of the messaging needs to be improved. I can show you that. So this one is quite a hard one to read, but we'll be venturing into trying to make these more user friendly, such that you can have a much more smooth time of fixing. I could go into just a quick like example of what it looks like as you're typing. It's going to show up. So if I do something like this for an unsupported schema, it's going to tell me that it was expecting a supported schema. Type document relations, define member is user. And you could see through, you could see throughout that while I was going a little bit fast, it's validating on the fly with every character change. And it's for someone who's not as familiar as working with writing models, it's been really helpful, not only during development, but it's kind of like as dog fooding, to learn the model validation ins and outs. I'll leave it there. We're working on getting this feature out in the next release.
Perfect. Thank you, Daniel. I always have a problem as a developer with that feature. Yeah, it's probably because I don't get, I'm not like to get bad feedback from people saying you are wrong, right? It's like you're driving and there's someone sitting next to you, like next to your driver's seat. They always know what's the right thing to do. Like, I know, red, green, like a turn right, turn your left, right? And always pointing your mistakes. Anyway, so That's good. Let's go to the next thing. So this is the feature I mentioned about testing model. This is already released in the FGA's CLI. So the way this works is that we have a model on the left, on my left, and then a YAML file on the right that points to that model. You see, it says model file hello FGA, which is the one I have on the other panel. I specify some tuples and then some tests that are going to run using these tuples, right? So in this case, it's a check that says, okay, user N has related to object document README, and then you can list all the relationships that should be true, that we should return allow true, and the same thing with list objects. I don't. The screenshot doesn't show that, but in the can view there, you'll be able to see all the documents that user N can view. Right. The goal of this feature. So and the other interesting piece is that if you run the test from the CLI, you don't need to configure an OpenFGA server to actually run the test. Okay, so if it's running it in memory by kind of loading an OpenFGA version, like a limited OpenFGA implementation in the FGA CLI. So that way, if you want to run these tests from your CI/CD pipelines, you can define the tests for your model in this file, right, and validate the model without even configuring or hitting a server, right? So I think this is pretty cool. We don't have the GitHub action yet, but we're going to build it in the next week or so, and so we can also help you integrate that in CI/CD pipelines. Good. This is our Datadog widget for the percentage of in-memory cache hits we got with the feature that I mentioned about the new cache that we implemented. So it's interesting, right? So getting that percentage of cache hits, of course, it depends on the load you have and the time to live you specify in your cache, but it gave us a good performance bump in our implementation. So things we are working on. This is a feature we mentioned a couple of times already in the previous meetings, which is a way to let you define more like an attribute-based like authorization features in the or models. And in this case, what we're doing is we are deciding that a document user can view a document if a time grant did not expire. And so what you do is you define the model in the way it's expressed here, and where you define a function that's takes C parameters, the current time, grant timestamp, and grant duration, and then compares them. And those parameters are instantiated, part of them in a tuple you write, which is the moment you grant for a permission. In this case, we are granting user X to access document 1 from 1 hour after this moment. Okay? And then when we check, we instantiate the rest of the parameters. And in this case, we are saying, okay, the current time it is 1. Let me know if I'm a viewer or not. And you can make this kind of checks. There are more examples that are described in a roadmap entries, right? So, but this is very flexible and will let us support other kind of scenarios that are pretty interesting. And then something else we are working on is we are getting customers trying to adopt OpenFGA that are large organizations. And this example, for example, it would be, let's say, Atlassian is trying to use FGA to define their models. They have multiple teams, and a team working in Confluence, a team working in Jira, and also a team working in the core entities that they need for authorization model. So the way this would work is each team will manage their own authorization model in GitHub, and with their own code owners and permissions and pull request flows. And once and then before deploying the system, they will combine them in a single model that they will push to production, right? And this way you see there's a base module. This module is imported from the Confluence one that refers some types in the base module, okay? And this is the way you kind of build a more complex system with FGA. And after this, the other thing is we want to do, I don't have a slide for this one, is let you define permissions like this application, this client ID, or this secret can only write tuples for the specific module, right? So and that will let that if you are Atlassian, you can give different credentials to different applications, Jira, Confluence, and the core base, and then you can restrict what operations they can do in the other modules from the point of view of which tuples they can update or not, right? Write or delete or check. Good. So this is this one, and so we are going to be in KubeCon in Chicago in November. We got so we presented a few talks. We got one accepted, which is awesome for us because the first time we get one accepted. We're also gonna get a kiosk there, and we are an OpenFGA project meeting. So if you're gonna attend KubeCon or have someone in your companies that are gonna attend KubeCon, please tell us to reach out. And if you are close to Chicago and you wanna also hang out, let us know, and we can meet and talk about FGA or whatever you want to talk about. And so this is KubeCon. There's also a conference that is called Octane. That is the Okta conference. That's happening early in the first week of October in San Francisco. We also want to have presentations about OpenFGA there. And if you are in the Bay Area, first week of October, also let us know, and we can also meet and talk about FGA or whatever you like. Okay, so, and now we're going to do an experiment, which is we're going to ask Matthew, which is our awesome designer, to kind of facilitate a discovery session on OpenFGA. So we're going to ask you to kind of help us go through some questions, and we're going to use a Canva board to collaborate, and we'll see how this works, okay? So the first time, maybe it works great, maybe it doesn't. So Matthew.
It's going to be great, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us in the meantime as we work through this. Like Andres mentioned, it's an experiment. We're doing this for the first time. I'm going to share my screen and just set us up here. And I want to talk about how OpenFGA is a community product. We want to build the product that you want us to build. And to that end, we've released this community survey. I'll drop a link in the chat in a moment just so you can find it and add your notes to this in case you haven't already. This is going to be a major mechanism for us to track a baseline for 2023 that we can compare against in 2024. But also, we're going to take the answers from a lot of the questions in here that define the scale, the business vertical, the use cases, the features that you're building, your amount of sophistication and experience with the product. If you're a beginner, we can cater towards beginners. If you're an advanced user, we can make sure we have advanced content for you if you answer the survey and help us prioritize our work. Today, in addition to the survey, which is an ongoing element, we're going to do this quick whiteboarding exercise. I'm going to paste the 2 links into the chat right now. So you'll see the first one's the community survey. If you haven't filled it out, feel free to do that at your leisure. The second one is this Canva board, and I've opened it in an incognito window so you can see what I see, and I can just walk you through getting rid of the mess. There's a privacy policy to close. There's this cookies. If you're like me, you can reject all, save and close. And then there's this sidebar here on the left-hand side, and you can either command / or click this hide button, and then suddenly Canva's a lot nicer to work with. So you'll have a much easier time from this point onwards if you hide all of that. You'll see each of us popping in here. This is all anonymous. You can be totally frank and honest with us in this. We're not going to hold it to you. If you want to follow up with it, if you want to identify yourself, feel free. We can help cater to you. We can reach out to you for more detail. My agenda, I'm going to review, walk through the 4 questions below. We're going to spend a couple minutes brainstorming answers. If we find we need more time, we can take more time. If we find we're done in 2 minutes, we can stop and talk about it. And then after that, if there's notes that you want to expand upon, maybe it was hard to fit things into a sticky note on here, you can use this time. If there's notes that Andres or any of the engineering team want to dig into so that they can be more clear and specific, then we can use that time appropriately. So our 4 questions here, you can either pinch to zoom or you can use this slider in the bottom right. Our 4 questions, first is, what problems are you trying to solve with OpenFGA? And this is obviously a little bit simple on the surface. We want to solve authorization problems, but if you have a specific nature in your product, like you want to do fine-grained sharing of documents, for example, or you have some other specificity that you want to elaborate on, this is going to help us tailor our roadmap accordingly. The second question is, what's the most difficult part of configuring or operating OpenFGA on your product or team? And obviously, this is going to vary depending on how long you've been using the product and what stage of your growth you're at. If you're just beginning, you can tell us about what's the most difficult part about navigating the documentation or a GitHub repo, or actually downloading things and running them. If you're advanced, you can tell us about deploying, and you can tell us about infrastructure problems or latency concerns or anything like that. If you're in the middle, maybe you have concerns about modeling, or maybe you have concerns about structuring tuples correctly. The third question, we want to hear about what's the strongest part about the OpenFGA workflow or user experience for you and your team. And the reason for this is not to pat ourselves on the back, but we want to know if you really like something, we want to keep it that way. We don't want to adjust and pivot away from something that you find very valuable. And we also want to have very strong goals for maintaining quality where we've already got it. So if there's something you feel very strongly about, if you found there's something that is working really well, list it here. And then in question 4, we'll go into the reverse. And as I mentioned before, please do be honest. Don't feel like you have to hold back. What parts of the OpenFGA workflow or user experience do you and your team find the most problematic? And this is going to help us structure our time so that we're fixing the right bugs, so that we're enhancing the right workflows, so we're adding features where you need them the most. So to work on any of these, you'll grab one of these stickies, you can click and drag, and then if you double click on it, then you have keyboard control to say, I love OpenFGA. Click outside. You can copy and paste. You can Command C and Command V if you want more, or you can grab some more here. We've got some folks working in here. Looks like we're being successful. I'm going to leave it with maybe a 5-minute timer. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can stop looking at the screen. Looking at my screen, you can already see this if you've opened it in the browser. And then we can resume sharing screen afterwards if we want to review together. So 5 minutes on the timer. Feel free to ask in the Zoom meeting chat or come off mute if you're having difficulty and there's something we can help you out with.
You can also use this as an example of how to facilitate a great discovery session like from Matthew. Okay, so you can take that back too.
I'll also encourage all the engineers on our team. You're using this product as well, so feel free to mention your dog fooding experiences. We can capture those alongside everyone else. And if you can't necessarily capture your idea in one sticky, like if there's 2 dimensions to it, feel free to use more. The next level facilitation is if Jeopardy, like hold music playing so that we can all play along. All right, we're closing out on time. People are still typing. Feel free to keep typing. But oh, there's our little timer note. I wanted to start talking, and Andres, FGA team, if anyone wants to dig into any one of the sticky notes that you see for more clarity, or participants, if anyone wants to elaborate, maybe you couldn't get your thoughts out cleanly onto with the keyboard, maybe you'd prefer just to talk about it. We have a couple minutes left in the meeting. We can use this time for discussion and Q&A. So we can use the raise hand function in Zoom if we have a lot of people that want to talk and we want to queue up. Right now, I think we could just unmute and start chatting if there's no one already speaking. And thank you to everyone who contributed. This is awesome. Every little bit counts.
Who wrote the one? So what's the most difficult part of configuring or operating OpenFGA? There's a sticky that says listing is a challenge. When listing the documents a user has access to, we essentially have to use our internal schema to build a superset. I'd like to learn more about that personally. Whoever wrote that.
Hey, this is Andrew. I wrote that one, and I talked about it at another meeting a couple months ago. I can't remember exactly when. But yeah, we have these like access tables in our database where it's like user Andrew has access to this report at the level of editor or owner or something like that. And then when the report gets created, we push we translate those to tuples that we push into OpenFGA. And my user could have access to like hundreds of reports directly, but then I could also have access to reports through my team or through like my workspace. And some of those might depend on like my role within the organization or my role on the team. So those would be like relation-based access patterns in our authorization model. And basically, like it'd be great if we could just go to OpenFGA in a performant way and say, just give me everything that Andrew has access to. But we weren't quite able to do that. And so we just will like make queries against our database and say, these are all of the reports that Andrew could potentially have access to based on the query that he's making. And then we run each of those checks individually against OpenFGA, which is working pretty well. But it does mean that we have to like build a lot of application logic around like evaluating what could be possible based on configuration in our system.
I would just sort of second that. It's a problem I actually ran into. I think part of the issue is when you build a model, it's pretty you run tests generally on positives, right? I want this person to access this, and you run that test and the answer comes back as true. What I don't know is all the false positives. I have no way of checking that. Did I make a mistake in my model? And in fact, they've got access to a bunch of stuff I didn't mean them to. So that was a problem I was sort of running into.
So Andrew, in specifically, so the list objects API, is it just that the number of objects that a user or documents, I guess, have access to, that's too large basically of a number to be practical for your use case? Is that the main problem there?
Yeah, I think so. Or like when I load up like my reports page or something like that, there's typically like we'll default to a time range of 30 days. And so on our side, we can like limit the requests to auth to that, like two reports in that time range. And that's probably going to be faster than like listing everything in auth over the last 2 years that I'd have access to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I see.
So I think that was also part of the trade-off as well, whereas like we couldn't, it wasn't easy for us to include like an attribute of the object in the listing. Like we couldn't have a filter in auth or in OpenFGA, and maybe I think that's probably how it's supposed to be designed. Like that's too much of our application logic, but yeah.
So if you had an index of like a flattened index, which we've talked about building in the future, we've kind of referred to it internally as the expanded watch or expanded read changes API, where you basically get a flattened index of the effective permissions for any user for a particular object. Then you could then apply the appropriate database joins and filters that are specific to your application logic, your time range, for example, and do that more efficiently. So
yeah.
Sounds like list objects, because list objects doesn't have a knowledge of your application logic, of your time range. It knows nothing about the time at which your documents were created.
Yeah.
That's where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Sense. Good. And I had a question about the one where it talks the language doesn't allow the full expressiveness of Zanzibar models. What is the specific thing that you were referring to, or you were needing beyond the one that we know that you cannot add like an intersection and unions in the same line, like with parentheses or something like that, right?
Yeah, I wrote that one, Andres, but it was because
okay.
the one next to it, yeah, we don't have compound rewrites yet, right? You
Okay.
can't do parentheses and stuff.
Okay. So that is kind of what is like, instead of subtweeting is sub canvassing, something like that, right? So
I like it. I like representing all opinions. It's good.
Good. Yeah. So that's something we're gonna work with. That is good, and that I think that's mentioned also there in the comment. I don't know if anyone. Yeah. Such with permissions makes sense. That's a challenge, and we keep working on that, right? That comment about the Python SDK, that's useful. I don't know if for like Adrian and Ragged, you understand what they are talking about. I don't know, because I'm not familiar with Python much.
Yeah, I think
And
yeah, I think they ask, like, if I understand correctly, is that right now the user has to go through, like, it's not clear where the import is from unless you look at the code. I think that's a very good feedback that we will need to take and try to fix it.
Perfect.
For whoever wrote that, we'd love if you can reach out maybe on Discord
or I think
so
maybe GitHub found an issue. I think is maybe so that we can keep track of that.
Great. Okay, and then with the one about the modeling question, I don't know, Ragged, if you looked at it more closely, or how we can help them with that one. User owner and member parent.
The modeling question is the one John wrote, right?
No, right now we are struggling with the relation definition, allowing only unions or only intersections, but not both.
Yeah, that's what John wrote. Yeah.
No. I wrote the one.
No.
That was actually me.
No.
I wrote that one, and also the one.
Yeah.
About
No, but okay. No, I wonder if that. Sorry.
Is it the fact that we don't just allow both ands and ors in the same one with parentheses? So what we do in this case is have intermediary relationship to do that.
Yeah. So you don't need to do. I think you don't need to do what you are doing there. It will be more something like saying like a admin temp equals admin or owner, like an admin equals admin temp and member from parent. Okay, so you decompose those two relationships, and then you will use just the one that composes both conditions, something like that. We can follow up if you didn't explain myself well. Right? We can follow up on that also in Discord if you want, or
yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, I think I know what you mean, and this would have blown up our authorization model because we have 5 roles that this is applicable to, and then we would have done that already. But maybe I haven't understood it correctly yet.
No, you understand it correctly. So you need to have you need to add more relations there. So you need to do this for every role that you are defining. Okay, so you need to add an intermediate one. So once we let you support, and so today yeah, Andrew, go ahead. Yeah, you're muted.
Would it be possible to alias something like that? Because I don't mean to hijack here, but like admin and member from parent, like could you alias that and refer to the alias in all of like the different lines of the model so that you don't have to type that on every single relation, if that makes sense?
So by aliasing, you mean creating an intermediate relationship, or
like create
another
variable. Create a variable that's like admin and member from parent or something like that, and then you don't have to put that on like repeatedly. You could just reference the.
Okay.
Because some of them can get pretty long.
So I think here the confusing part, which is because there are no brackets, it doesn't make, or it's not sure which is takes precedence, the or and the and. So is it owner and, so if a user is directly assigned, they're automatically admin, but if they're an owner, they have to be member from parent. So it's not clear, but depending on what Andrew is saying works. So if the owner and is a single relationship, it could be set separately. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yeah, I think so.
I think Andrew is more referring, sometimes you see yourself writing a lot kind of or owner or member from the same thing in every relationship, right?
Yeah.
So if there's a way that without creating another relationship, intermediate relationship, you can kind of have a macro alias where you can say, okay, I want to add the same condition everywhere, and you define that condition once, right? Something like that, to simplify maintaining and writing and reading a model like that, right?
Yeah.
I think it's we haven't thought about that, so we'll take a look at it and see how it will look.
And I will
Okay,
say
good.
too, this is a side effect of the choice, essentially, of trying to hide the not having compound rewrites and hiding self as well here, right? So maybe that this is some good feedback for that. But
yeah, in any case, if we so once we support, so the JSON model today supports writing like the ands and ors thing, right? So we need to expose that in the language, and that's something I think we're going to do pretty soon whenever we finish with the language work we are working today. So should be. So right now we're kind of refactoring our language engine to do the Visual Studio Code thing and then reuse that across everywhere. So across like the validation we use in JavaScript in the playground and across the validations we do in the server. So the language project that you can see in GitHub is having everything together. And so we rewrote the grammar. Now it's an ANTLR grammar that we can also reuse across languages. So we can use the same grammar in Go and in JavaScript. And so we need to extend that grammar to support this, which shouldn't be a lot of work. But ANTLR was kind of more difficult to work with than we were expected. So we need to find some time to pick that up. Okay, so I don't know if anyone has any question or anything they want to mention before we wrap up. We are kind of in time, but feel free to reach out to by like GitHub or Discord or to us directly. And I just posted my Calendly link there. If someone wants to schedule a meeting, a short call to discuss whatever thing you want, just feel free. And so I don't know if anyone has anything to say before we leave or anything to add. Okay, so thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see each other in a month.
Thank you very much.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
folks.
you. Bye.
thank you.